What is happening out there, Roto Scouts basketball fans? 3:30 on the dot. How's that for an early start time? Day after a no-show by me. Unfortunately, yesterday I just got completely bogged down with nonsense. Had everything lined up. I had such a good show planned yesterday. I'm not making this up. I had multiple Wowie tabs all set up, talk about all the different possibilities of every game and everything. Ran Sims, had everything ready to go. I was going to jump on at 4 o'clock. I think it was the 4 o'clock hour. Whatever it was, 2 minutes before I was going to schedule the show, Dame was out. Then it was something else. I didn't want to do another show where I was talking through the entire thing with we know this is all incorrect. So it just fell by the wayside. Today, we're going early. I was actually trying to do this at 2:30, but we had some back-to-backs. We had some news we're waiting on, some of which we still haven't really gotten. But there's also a 14-game NHL slate tonight. If you're looking for projections for that, they'll be up after this show. I'm 3/4 of the way through it. So just was trying to work on that. Was trying to wait out getting the Ace Mine Sims done. So we landed at 3:30. But we got a little time to talk through this. I'm going to try and do this an hour. Try and get us out of here for 4:30. Reason being, again, got to finish up some of those NHL projections for that ridiculous slate. And two, I just kind of want to condense things down. We'll talk through, the key plays and everything, but we know there's going to be a lot of changes coming for this slate. So we'll go through it as usual. Cujo's here. Hope your Tuesday's going well too, pal. Anthony Taylor's here. What's going on, Ant? I should have filled the pet's water fountain. I'll be back in a flash. All right, we're back. Apologies for that. Quick exit. If that thing, I could deal with it sounding like somebody's taking a leak for the next hour in the other room, but if it goes completely empty, it hits this high-pitched grinding noise that's just, it sounds like death. So better to take care of it. Anyway, handful of people here for the early show. Anthony Taylor and Cujo I said hi to already. Jump into the chat if you're out there. Say hello. Hit the like button as we get started. If you've never subscribed to the channel before, subscribe. We're trying to get it up over 1,000 subscribers, let's say by, the beginning of baseball season? That would be a good target. Gonna have some stuff coming out in the next little bit for baseball for full season. Obviously, we're going to be on top of DFS. We've got the Super Bowl this weekend. NHL and NBA main slates ongoing with all the chaos. Covering it all. $1 a day, under $1 a day. On a weekly, monthly, or quarterly, gets you access to all of it. No per sport nonsense. No messing around. Nice and straightforward. Trying to keep the money in your pocket as much as we can and build the bankroll, not take from it. So an interesting 7-gamer. Dallas at Philly. Philly favored by 4 in a home game. Somewhat intact, but a lot of question marks. We know a few of their guys are out, and then everybody else essentially is questionable. We had a trade between these two teams as well. Not entirely sure what the impact of that's going to be, but they swapped Caleb Martin and Quentin Grimes for one another. They very well, I'm not sure if that means they can play tonight or not. That just happened at 1:30. I doubt that they're going to take care of it on the DFS side, though. So I would expect that those two guys, even if they're playing for their new teams on opposite sides of where they plan to play this game, I don't think that they're going to be available for us. 228.5 point total in that one. No AD debuting for Dallas yet. I think that's going to be over the weekend. Sounds like Luka is going to be debuting for the Lakers over the weekend. But that's a decent total. We've only got really one poor total on this slate. And that game still at least has some pieces in it. That's the Rockets and the Nets. The Rockets are favored by 10 in a road game against the Nets. Nets without their usual pieces and some other guys who may or may not play even coming down to the wire because they're on the trade block. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that situation. But the Rockets are favored by 10. That's a 212 total. The Knicks at the Raptors. Knicks on a back-to-back. No OG Anunoby. Several other guys listed as probable just because they're a little dinged up and they're on the back-to-back. But it seems like everybody other than OG is going to be out there. Regular setup for the Knicks. 228.5 point total in that one. No RJ Barrett on the Toronto side is creating some value. So you see Ochai Agbaji jumping toward the top of the board that you guys are looking at there. Some of the other Raptors will come up a little bit. And then the Knicks starters are always going to look at least decent. Karl Anthony Towns, one of the top 2 projected overall players. It's a weird slate that way. It's like LeBron and Kat and maybe 1 or 2 other guys in the upper 40s to 50s range. And that's the top end. There's no 60-point player projected today. So, interesting slate that way. Game of the night, Boston at the Cavs. Not bad at all. Down to a 1-point spread. Cavs favored by 1 at home. 239-point total, 2 excellent offenses, 2 good defenses, 2 of the very best teams in the league, and 2 of the 3 best teams in the Eastern Conference. Excellent game. Should be plenty of pieces from this one. I think at worst, we're just mining options from the stars, or from the starters, rather. Great pool of options there. Miami at Chicago. Interesting, pacey scoring spot for the Miami side. They're favored by 3.5 in a road game, 228.5 point total there. Chicago with the openings from the trade could get interesting as far as some moving parts. We'll see how they all mathed out in the sim results. Lakers at the Clippers, 8.5 points favored in the Clips, 221 point total in that one. LeBron, as I mentioned, one of the top 2 overall highest projected players on the slate right now. We'll see how everybody comes through as far as the sims go in that one. And then we're ending the night, Indy at Portland. Interesting one. 234.5 point total. Kind of juicy there. 5.5 point spread. We had Miles Turner out for Indy last night. He's another guy who's potentially on the trade block, so may not end up playing today. Could get interesting out in that one. So one to watch at the end of the night and maybe save some swaps for. As far as our ins and our outs go, the news that came out through the day. So we had that Caleb Martin for Quentin Grimes trade. We had Dalen Terry downgraded from questionable to doubtful. Taylor Horton Tucker confirmed as out. He was doubtful to start the day. Probable Max Christie is available to make his debut. Alperen Sengun's probable. Claxton is available, but that one comes with an asterisk to me. If Claxton is truly on the block, I don't know how that, I don't know whether that available means definitely active, 100% locked, sure playing. So keep an eye on Claxton. That's one of the probables availables that I'm a little bit more hesitant about. Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Karl Anthony Towns, all probable. Duncan Robinson, LeBron James, and Gabe Vincent, all probable. Questionables, Andre Drummond, Joel Embiid, Eric Gordon, Caleb Martin, KJ Martin. So there's your Sixers. Jock Landale, Chris Boucher, Bruce Brown, Adam Sanogo, Jalen Smith, and Dalen Terry. Dalen Terry downgraded to doubtful, as I said. And then outs, Anthony Davis, Derek Lively, Dwight Powell, PJ Washington, Paul George, Jared McCain, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, Fred VanVleet, Bojan Bogdanovic. Stumbled on that one. Noah Clowney, Cam Johnson, Max Lewis, DeAnthony Melton, Ben Simmons, Cam Thomas, Derek Whitehead, OG Anunoby, Mitch Robinson, RJ Barrett, Jimmy Butler, Josh Richardson, Drew Smith, Torrey Craig, Chris Duarte, Talon Horton Tucker's doubtful, Luka's out, Maxi Kleba's out, Cam Reddish is doubtful, Christian Wood and Cam Christie are all out. That takes care of that. Yeah, Agbaji's up toward the top of the board there. 74% in that DK sim for 3,400. I actually, in the update that's going to go up after the show, he comes down by about a point. So you probably get him a little bit less than this 74%. But he's looking like just a value square. On FanDuel, even at 43, he came up a pretty significant amount of the time. I threw him 30 minutes here. No RJ. I figure that we're going to get a decent chunk of Agbaji. The range is probably 28-32, somewhere in that territory. But it's one that could be a little bit fragile. Definitely one to watch. He only played 20 in the last game. Put up a 34.5 FanDuel points, which is pretty good, but that's from a 0.74 per minute guy, so you don't necessarily want to give him credit for that kind of performance. What we're looking at right here is just value-based. Value over opportunity. But yeah, he's hitting the board a little bit. Powers here. Powers ready to see where Lonzo goes. Yeah, it's an interesting piece. I wouldn't be shocked if he moved. Lowry picked up a Q tag. Okay. Tango says, reading into PJ Washington out at all for a trade. What was the reason they listed? I wouldn't be surprised to see them making some more moves. Let's see. They called it personal. Let's see if there's an actual reason listed. Oh, looks like he had a kid. Per Mike Curtis, Mavs beat writer. His wife, he and his wife just had a kid. So he's out for that. But, the Mavs are gonna, I think, be a little bit active to do something else. And I didn't even talk about it off the top. This is the first time I've been on since those ridiculous trades over the weekend. What a blast. That was the most fun I've had on, NBA Twitter, the NBA sphere out there, whatever you want to call it. Just that news dropping like super late night on Saturday, and just the entire universe going nuts about it. That was the most fun it's been. That's how it used to be in the online space, where like you wouldn't find as much just like people hating one another for no good reason. This was the most unified I've seen the internet on anything in like 10 years was the response to that trade. One, everybody universally thought it was fake. Then two, once we realized it was real, everybody universally hated it for Dallas. It was an awful trade for Dallas. And the crazy thing is, I think AD is still fantastic, right? I think part of the nonsense that's been going on is AD. People forget how good AD is. AD is currently a top 10, 12 player, a top 5 big man in the league. People talk about him. I saw one guy comparing it to a baseball trade, saying it would be like trading Fernando Tatis for Anthony Rendon. Anthony Rendon hasn't had 250 plate appearances in the last 4 years. He hasn't hit more than 6 home runs in a season in the last 4 years. Anthony Davis right now is one of the top 10, 12 players in basketball. By DPM, he's a top 10. So, I mean, it's insane the lack of respect that AD is getting in this. And even with me thinking that, it is a terrible trade for Dallas. AD's great. You do not give up a 25-year-old generational superstar for a 31-year-old somewhat fragile big. And I don't even think the fragility is part of the problem with AD. It's just a bad move. Completely crazy. Great move by the Lakers. Completely crazy to trade Luka Doncic, arguably the top asset in basketball, top 3 asset in basketball. And you only called one team, and you made them the offer? And then he allegedly got talked out of picks. Bananas. And then I was saying, looking at what San Antonio ended up doing and getting De'Aaron Fox, you don't think that they could have gotten more of that San Antonio war chest of picks if they just said, hey, by the way, we're thinking about trading Luka. It's a short drive over to San Antonio from Dallas. Total mismanagement of assets. Terrible. Poor Mark Cuban catching a lot of strays, not even involved with decision making anymore. My favorite thing, I think, about that trade, though, was the knowledge that Presti, who was not involved in this trade at all, already owns Dallas's 2028 first rounder. The dude's a magician. But it was just completely nuts. And then the other trades that have come down, it's been a blast. It's been a really good couple days ahead of the deadline. Should be a fun week. Hopefully it doesn't mean a totally flat deadline day. Hopefully we'll still have some good stuff. A lot of teams doing some shopping. The Lakers need some size now. Supposedly they're one of the teams that's hot for Turner. They're one of the teams that's after Mitch Robinson from the Knicks. I don't know if the Knicks want to make that deal. Not sure what the Lakers could really give the Knicks that would be valuable. I think they would move Mitch, but I think they need something better than what the Lakers might be offering. It's not like they're looking for picks. Anyway, if we're going to do this by 4:30, we better stop talking about trades that happened 3 days ago and start talking about this slate. So let's give this a quick little look here. Cut this down positionally. We'll get guards on the board. Mr. Brunson, top of the board. Hello. Coming off a big game yesterday. 36.8 minutes played, put up 66.2 FanDuel points. And we're going right back to the top of the board with JB. Both sites, tremendous. 56% exposure on FanDuel and way ahead of the field over there. 52% on DraftKings. He's 8,400 on DK. He's 8,800 on FanDuel. Playing at 1.17 this year, a little bit of a haircut in usage, deferring a little bit to Karl Anthony Towns on the offensive side, but when called upon, obviously can go out there and win the team a game and carry them to victory and give you monster fantasy performances. And it's not like this is a crazy downgrade. It's more that the price has come down further than it should have against the dip in production overall. So you're getting a pretty cheap JB on DraftKings, and 8,800, perfectly happy to pay that on FanDuel. 5.12 as a value score, just over the value threshold on DK at 5.51. Love it. Yeah, I mentioned the Grimes trade, Millie. Like I said at the top, I'm not sure what that means for their availability NBA-wise tonight, but I'm confident that they're not going to be there for DFS, just because they're not going to go out and issue an update to switch those guys' teams. But technically, I think they could be out there if the league processes the deal quick enough. I think they could be out there in different jerseys than they were planning on wearing. Cam Whitmore with missing pieces for Houston. Definitely looking very solid. 6.27 value score for just 3,600 on the DraftKings slate. Multi-position eligible shooting guard and small forward. This is on 24 minutes. I could see him conceivably playing 26, even 28, something along those lines. But went a little bit safe with it. I could also see a dip, 22. So it's a broad range of minutes, and we're probably in the correct space, but conservative, if that makes sense. And we're getting him 50% of the time. He's played the season at 1.02 per minute. They're going up against a Brooklyn team comprised mostly of backups. Shouldn't be an issue for Whitmore at that price. At 41 on FanDuel, we are above the value threshold, 5.3 as a value score. And we did get him in more than 1 in 4 of our lineups. But we've got a hard undercut to the field at that number, which is kind of interesting. Just came up very differently. I suspect it's the $500 price difference, the lack of the multi-position that's doing that. But I do think Cam Whitmore's interesting. I do think Cam Whitmore's playable on FanDuel. It's just you're probably bumping into a lot of the field there. And we're getting, some pretty good situations on Jalen Brunson, on Tyler Hero that are taking up some of the... actually, not even. That's small forward. Let's see. What else? Small forward, 20% on Williams. Let me check that real quick. I want to see what's going through the small forward on FanDuel. He's got a big share of Buzelis, which is interesting. At 4,000 on DraftKings, he didn't come up at all, but at 41 with a multi-position, he came up 42% of the time on FanDuel, significantly above the value threshold here and there. Interesting, the discrepancy between sites. We're right with the field at 18% on DK. But I'm curious. It looks like it's just a big spread. It's not any one guy that's pulling all of those shares away. So I think if you take more Cam Whitmore on FanDuel, you're perfectly fine doing that. I don't know that I would go chase the field and run it all the way back up. We're that big an undercut. The field's got to be in the 30s, I would think, at least. So I don't know that I would chase it all the way back up, but if, as usual, a few additional shares beyond that is perfectly fine. You're probably okay at 30 or so. Let's see. Oh, yeah, you'd be okay at 30. You would not need to double our number there, our exposure number, but it's closing in on double. So there's a lot of Cam Whitmore in the public lineups out there. Let me get back to what we were actually talking about. Tyler Hero and Terry Rozier coming up pretty effectively. We're getting Hero on both sides. 52% of him on FanDuel. He's right at our 5.0 value score. Projected very strong. This is a great opportunity on the Miami side. Just anybody playing Chicago, but especially with the downgraded version of Chicago now. Looks like a day where Miami's going to be able to do whatever they want. Several of their players floated to pretty strong value marks. At 8,400 point guard only on DraftKings, so no multi-position. We got him a little bit less, 32% of the time. But I do think that's at worst a rotational piece. If you want to shave down some of those Brunson shares, you can go directly to Hero. They're the same price, and that's not a terrible option. It is a differentiated value as far as that value mark goes, but that's because we've got Brunson projected for an additional 3 points. We've got him playing a minute more. If you level that out at 36 minutes apiece, or if you bump Hero up for another minute, that gets a lot closer, and it probably evens them out a little bit. So those two, particularly on DK for the same price, point guard only, are very, very close. If one starts pulling away from the other in ownership for the public, you can absolutely play that back and forth and try and find the leverage in between. Rozier at 51 on FanDuel falls short of our value threshold. He's in the same beneficial situation here, but he's only played this season at 0.80. Who knows what his bets are on tonight, so I don't love tangling with the Terry Rozier side of it. But on DraftKings for only 46, it's a little bit more compelling. He's a 5.68 value score on DK. 26.6% of our lineups. That is below the field, but it's a gentle undercut to the field. I think that makes sense. That said, I don't totally mind drawing this down a little further if you've got something good to spend it on. I don't know that I'm going like directly to Grady Dick here, who's 26% and below the field, but for the same price with common shooting guard or guard spot positionality, we do have Zaire Williams from Brooklyn there. He's level with the field at 25, and we get, it looks like a little bit better of a position. So if you want to build this one up a little bit and take this one down a little bit further, I really don't have issue with that. Rozier played 32 minutes or nearly 33 in their last game. He's averaged around 28. I gave him that 28. I think the range could conceivably be anywhere from 26 to like 32. But again, very, very beneficial on the Miami side of that matchup. Just think you could move that around. There's, these two guys right here. Again, the 5.75 and 5.74 are objectively better value scores than 5.68. Dennis is out there. He's probably making fun of me for pointing out these. Super obvious again. On FanDuel, Zaire Williams comes up 19% of the time, level with the field. Perfectly fine option over there. He's just more uncomfortable at 5,000. Small forward only. He's played well in his opportunities this year, though. In 0.88 per minute, 18.8% usage. Essentially average usage. Decent performance. Up nearly 1/10 of a point per minute on technically slightly less overall usage. He's not exactly a stat suffer, but he's not awful. 9.7% assist rate, 10.2% rebounding rate. You can do worse in those categories. So for the price, he's a filler guy here who can rotate through, but he is above the value threshold. So I don't mind the Williams play on the FanDuel slate, and I kind of like it over here. Again, as an alternative. The field's there at a 1-4 rate, but if you're moving him up a little at the expense of those two guys where we came up lighter, and then maybe you take a little bit less of the $6,900 Giddey shares on the other side of the Miami-Chicago game, I think Giddey looks very good in this spot. And again, no more Zach LaVine here to worry about. Hilarious, by the way, that LaVine and DeRozan are reuniting, because that works so well that you have to go out and buy it again. Unreal. So Giddey, definitely not a bad option, but we are lighter than the field on both sides. 19% below the field on FanDuel, where he's only a 4.7 value, and 5.11 is not our 5.5 value that we're looking for on DK. 6,900, only one position there. 16% and below the field. I don't mind having a few more shares. If you end up around 20, that's probably okay, but you'd be closer to just being with everybody. Keon, not really standing out. He's fine. You can take shares. He's in essentially the role that he's been in lately. 32 minutes. It's just Keon's price is now up to 56 on FanDuel. Shooting guard, small forward eligibility. 5,000 on DraftKings. Point guard, shooting guard eligibility. Probably like him a little bit better for the cheaper DraftKings price and the guard eligibility. 5.48 value is damn close to our 5.5. 4.81, kind of far off of it. But we do still get him on FanDuel below the field. 16% and below the field on DraftKings. Deuce, Deceptive Deuce, was announced as a starter yesterday. I missed it. Caught it 5 minutes after the announcement. Changed everything over, so about 10 minutes late, but still 20 minutes ahead of that game locking. And then about 7-8 minutes after that, They said, nah, you know what? We changed our minds. Precious is actually starting. So we had to unwind, go back to the original in the last 5 minutes before that game locked. Fun stuff. Anyway, I gave Deuces 26 minutes. It's right around what we've seen lately. With no OG out there, he could conceivably play a few more. Last night he played 25.6. He put up 11.7 FanDuel points. He's a 0.81 per minute DraftKings player, 0.80 on FanDuel. He's a mix and match type though. You really need extended minutes, extended surprise minutes from Deuce, even at cheap pricing, for him to really, really show standout value. I think he's just a shuffle through kind of a piece. You can see the difference. For 100 more, we're not getting him anywhere near the level that we're getting Cam Whitmore. Those are very distinctly different players. So Deuce is a moving part on this slate, more so on DraftKings where he's only 37 and plays both guard spots. At 47 on FanDuel, you really don't need to get there. If you see him starting, that could change the equation. If you see him in the starting lineup, or if one of these other Knicks manages not, Josh Hart takes the night off on the back-to-back, even though he's probable, then maybe, if you see this jump over 30, then maybe you consider a little bit more Deuce on FanDuel, and he would look better and better on DraftKings. He would become an interesting piece if we move that projection up over 30 on DK. Kobe White, another guy who's conceivably going to benefit in the newly configured Chicago rotation. Right now in 32 minutes, 9% below the field. He's a 0.93 guy on FanDuel, 0.99 guy on DraftKings. We got him 11%, undercut to the field. He's 6,400. He's shooting guard only on the DraftKings slate. I think he's another guy who's just kind of a moving piece. If you're looking to rotate out some $6,400 Anthony Simons, who I think we might have skipped over, that's a perfectly acceptable alternative for the exact same price. We were getting Simons at 22% and level with the field. I do like him slightly better. He's got the positional flex, which makes him slightly more appealing as a DFS option. But there's not a whole ton of daylight between the 32.3 for 6,400 and the 34.25 for the 6,400 when we're talking about a point per minute guy on either side of the equation. It's one possession here, one possession there, 1 minute here, 1 minute there. I've got Simons technically for a minute more, so it's just like the situation with those other guys. If I give Kobe White another minute, that's much closer to level. A lot of directly swappable pieces, particularly on DraftKings. Makes it interesting. I think Şengün was probable already, wasn't he? Yeah, Şengün's been probable. Appreciate the note, though, Tango. Always best to shout it out and make me check rather than having something slip by us. So, seriously, appreciate it. Power says Luka got the financial shaft, no $69 million and 0% state tax to probably $59 million and 13% tax. That's an $18 million pay cut before federal, and he just spent $15 million on a house. I'm not going to weep for Luka Doncic's financial status. I think he'll be okay. Does that suck? Did he want to leave Dallas? No, it doesn't seem like he wanted to leave Dallas. I think he felt like he was going to be playing there for at least most of his career. Definitely through the next Supermax. It sucks for him that he's not going to be eligible for that Supermax based on being on a different team now and everything. The taxes, I mean, yeah, whatever. You pay taxes. That's Texas should have state taxes. Maybe if they did, the federal government wouldn't have to give them so much goddamn money. Anyway. Jimmy Butler's running out of spots. Yeah, I was laughing at that the other day. Jimmy saying, no, I won't extend with the Warriors. Which is I guess a negotiating tactic on his part to, thinking that they would increase their offer for him, but really all it's going to do is effectively take him off. I sent a tweet out about it that nobody liked or saw, as with most of my tweets. I just basically said, how is Jimmy a bad teammate in his own trade negotiation with his own trade demand? Ludicrous. Power says he's still paid, but if you owe me $1,000 and only pay me $720, we got problems. Hey, look, the Lakers would give him that money. The Lakers are giving him that money. It's just somebody else is taking it. That's all. I'm confident he can flip his house. Maybe you can sell it to AD. Maybe they can just swap houses. I'm sure AD's got something nice. It's not like AD's living in a tiny apartment. That'd be funny. Tiny little 1-bedroom across from the arena. AD about to melt. Yeah, I do think it's amusing that they're both out for their first games. Not that they weren't hurt when they got traded. It's not a surprise, but it's just amusing. But like I was saying, I mean, AD gets no credit out there. It's kind of nuts. The evals for this trade were wild on that. I do like the GM though. Like he's too honest about like, yeah, they were the only team I called. I don't know. I just wanted to make a trade, so I made a trade. Like, dude, I'm not going to be here in 10 years. What do I care? All right. If you look into that guy too, he is the guy who about a decade ago, he was working for Nike. He screwed up the Steph Curry meeting. Apparently, according to his wiki, he played a video for Steph, like a pitch video from Nike. That was a Kevin Durant pitch video. And then during the meeting, he repeatedly called Steph Seth, which is his brother's name. And Steph went on to sign with Under Armour. So, of course, that's the guy you want running basketball operations. AD just bought a new house for $30 million. There you go. Power says, I lived in Dallas and in Newport Beach and went to LA many times. Lucas, female outlook and beaches just went up, up, up. You could go to South Padre Island in Texas, right? Go down to the shore. I know it's not close to, right? It's not close to Dallas, but he's got the means to get there. Anyway, let's keep moving here. Looking across sites, 48% Alonzo Ball coming out of that Chicago side of that Miami game on FanDuel because he's only 4,900 over there. Point guard only. Lonzo's been playing some minutes. You know, they announced that he was eligible to play up to 28 minutes these days. I've got him at 27. He played 28 in the last one. You could easily give him another minute and give him some more juice, but 5.28 as far as the value score, looking very, very strong on FanDuel. For 5,000 on DraftKings, point guard only, we only got him 4% of the time. Pretty firm undercut to the field. He's not a bad option over there. He's entirely playable at that price, but given what else we've got to work with on DraftKings, comes up a little bit light. Same is true at a different price tier for all of Darius Garland, Amen Thompson, and Scotty Barnes. We got, out of the three guys, we got our biggest share of Amen at 26%, but still below the field on the FanDuel slate. I think Amen Thompson is fantastic, but I gave him 38 minutes. He's a 1.09 per minute player this season. I know I've got him above that for today, and we're still not really topping out on shares. So I don't know that you really push it. If you level it with the field, it's okay, but I'd rather have the position. So I think we're good there. Scotty, another guy, just kind of expensive. 9,300. Pace down spot for the Toronto side of that one. Doesn't look great. 4% on FanDuel. I think he's playable. I think he's a mix and match type. But a mix and match type on the upper tier that comes that short of value on both sites, I don't love. 9,000 on FanDuel, point guard, small forward. I love the eligibility positionally on DraftKings, but same story. A little bit light against that salary, 4.6%. For Amen at 85, another point guard, small forward, 4.67% and below the field there as well. Between the two, there's an interesting, at least to me, discussion to be had about maybe you just wipe out your Scotty shares and just go with the less expensive option in Amen, who's got maybe the better upside today. I think at least slightly. But then you're really only taking him back to the field and you're still only like 10% owned. So it's probably not the best idea. I think it's doable, but probably not advisable. Mikal Bridges, 12% on FanDuel, 7% on DraftKings. He's a mix and match piece. All the Knicks starters outside of Jalen and Cat are going to look about how they usually look. And they'll just be bounced around by price, by position, the mechanics of the slate. Little bit of an uptick with OG out, but not dramatic for Bridges. Garland looking like a mix and match play. Really not seeing a lot out of Cleveland Boston on this board yet. Probably among the forwards, I would think. Here's Drew. 2%, 4% across sites. Nothing special. James Harden, another good per minute guy. 1.26, 1.32 across sites per minute this year. 5% FanDuel, 4% DraftKings. Below the field on both. Only a moderately appealing guy. 4.65 value score, 4.90. I think James could be a little bit cheaper than 94, 92 on this slate. That price is having an impact. It's difficult to justify Harden being 94 when Jalen Brunson's 88. 9,084. There's a little bit of a per minute points differential there, but not really, and certainly not on an upside day. Mix and match shares of all of Connect, Derek White, Duncan Robinson, Io, Donovan Mitchell, Kyrie, Jalen Green. Any one of those guys, perfectly fine in a handful of shares. Everybody came up in at least a few shares. The low point was the 1.3s on Kyrie and Jalen Green on DraftKings. The high point among those players was the 8% of Io on FanDuel. We are below the field on basically everybody while having some mix and match shares. Within that group of guys, if you wanted to get aggressive about somebody, on DraftKings, it's probably the more value-oriented guys, the Dalton Connects, Duncan Robinsons of the world here. Maybe you juice one of them up a little bit in between the two since we're closer to the field. Gently there with 4% in our pocket of Connect, it would probably be him. Maybe you sacrifice some of the dunk shares to get to a little bit more Connect. Not great, though. On FanDuel, it's probably the same thing. It's probably Connect that stands out as the guy you could maybe grab some more of just because of that value. 5.19 is above our threshold pretty decently. But not a priority to do so. And then the one standout differentiated guy across sites down here right now, Toumani Camara. 29%. He's a 5.21 value on FanDuel. Just a 4.86 on DraftKings because he's 5,900. Shooting guard, small forward eligible, but he's only a 0.76 per minute guy. 55, just a functionally better option. Putting him right level with the field. I think, given the desire to take a position, I would probably undercut that mark a little bit. 22, 25 in there feels pretty good. Gives me a few more shares to spread out amongst these guys. I do like the idea of having some of those shares, though. At worst, it gives you a little bit of flexibility in that late game, but you'd probably want to have like him and a higher priced guy so that you can go back and forth with, or have three guys from that game or from across the two late games. What's up, Doug? Doug's with me on Barnes vs. Amen. Like it. Tango, I did juice the Cleveland starter minutes by like just a minute and change for a couple of the guys. Like I think I gave Allen 2 more minutes than his average, or maybe it was just 1. But I leaned into that idea just kind of a little bit just because of the big matchup, Cleveland, Boston, and everything. So I did kind of go starters, core players heavy. But it's minor. It's just somewhat erases that idea that, all right, Cleveland, those guys are all great, but they tend to play 31-32 instead of 34-36 kind of minutes. I think it takes a little away from that today. Let's get on to forwards. I'll put the centers on the board as well. Hit the like button if you haven't already. If you're new, subscribe to the channel. I don't care if you hit the notification bell or not, but if you want them so that you know when shows are scheduled, go for it. Feel free to hit it and then mute it so that you don't actually get the pop-ups. I don't know if you hitting the notifications thing helps me or not. I know subscriptions do. And I know that if you've got some spare change in your pockets, under $1 a day gets you access to projections that I know will help you, whether you're a hand builder, whether you're a 150 maxer. I know for sure that you can utilize these projections to succeed because I've done it. Keeping the pricing under $1 a day because I am looking to cater directly to people who are entering a few lineups a day. Like Doug says, Doug's playing a couple lineups on FanDuel today. That's what I'm looking to target. There are plenty of sites out there charging $1,000 a month across 4 different sports for access to their projections and their tools and content and everything. And they're catering to a small community of people who are playing thousands of dollars a lineup a day. And everybody else feels the pain for having to pay up to those things, has to juggle their budget. Under $1 a day saves you money for eggs. That is almost the cost of one egg these days. For the cost of one egg, you can get access to MLB, NBA, NHL, and NFL projections. Every main slate. Not too bad. So check out rotoscouts.com. The Sims run at acemine.io. Those guys are absolutely great. Sims and Opto tools. I encourage you to check them out. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month over there. Still, great deal. Let's put the centers on the board like I promised. And we're going to get through this in 19 minutes. Right. I don't know why I just resorted that. Okay. Like I said, if you're out there on the site right now looking for NHL projections, the slate is rather large. 14 gamer on NHL today. I'm 3/4 of the way through it. I'm going to wrap them up as soon as I'm done with this show. I'm going to get through those, post those, then I'm going to do the NBA update. So the NBA update will be a little bit delayed after the show today. Good to hear, Money. Money Crockett says it really does truly help to sustain daily lineups. Love to hear it, bud. Again, that's what everything I ever did research-wise, surveying you guys and the big community when I worked over at Awesemo, everything we ever did said most people out there are building 1 lineup, 3 lineups, 5 lineups, 20. The 150 max community is a lot smaller than people think. So I'm trying to recalibrate the industry to cater to the people who actually matter out there. And again, I'm trying to keep money in your dinner budgets and your grocery budgets. I don't want people to have to quit DFS because grocery prices are high. That sucks. Anyway, Agbaji, again, this is a price-based thing. 43 on FanDuel is getting him into some lineups. He's going to come down a little bit in the update. I did knock his projection down. I actually probably will post that update anyway, right after the show, because I made a couple other small changes. But that'll knock him down to, if he's 44% and well above the field on FanDuel, 74% way, way above the field on DraftKings, maybe it's more like that 55, 60% and more gently above the field. But I still think the play looks good. He's a 0.74 per minute guy on 13.7% usage, though. So he's one of these guys that comes with an asterisk, even as a value play. He doesn't need to do much for 3,400. He doesn't even need to do much for 4,300. But on his per minute scale, there is a pretty big basement. There is a good opportunity for him to completely fail. So know that he's one of those types. You're more than likely than not getting you're less likely to get this performance, the 34 points in 20 minutes that he put up in their last game, than you are to be completely disappointed by having Ochai Agbaji. But the opportunity is going to be there. Karl Anthony Towns, I mentioned one of the top 2 projected players on both sites overall today. It's him and LeBron up at the top of the board. Where's LeBron? Where is LeBron? LeBron. Where is he? There he is. 28% FanDuel, just 1% DraftKings. Oof. Take a hit on DraftKings. That's a $500 price difference. Wow. And he's only power forward eligible on DK. That'd do it. So LeBron's a dramatically different play across sites, but as I was saying, 52 for Cat, 51 for LeBron, and then Jason Tatum coming in third at a 50. Those are your 3 guys projected over 50 today, I believe, on DraftKings. Only Cat and LeBron get over 50 on FanDuel. Tatum 0.75 short. Those are your 3 obvious, star type guys among these forwards and centers. And then we do have a handful of standouts among the guards we were just looking at. But Cat looks good. And having a really strong year, 1.43 per minute on DraftKings, 139 on FanDuel. 9,700 is not a bad price. 9,400 is a better price. Puts him at a 5.5 value score on DK. 5.21 way over the value threshold on FanDuel. He does look like he's impacting the slate differently on FanDuel, though. That center only, or that single center opportunity, rather, kind of biting him at the higher price. 16% below the field. Wouldn't mind having more, even if it means I'm just dead level with the field. Single center, I think you can get away with that a little bit more on FanDuel, where if you're just with the field, it's just, locking in that step on the way up to winning. So I think a little bit more 20-25 is perfectly fine. We do get a lot of Bam on the FanDuel slate in again, great spot going up against Chicago. But he's got power forward eligibility, so you can technically play them side by side without really worrying about it. Khalil Ware, right next to Bam, coming up quite a bit as well. He's center only, so you've got a decision point between him and Cat a little there, obviously at very different prices. 8% of Gafford, 8% of Zubac. It doesn't look like there's one guy just drawing all of that. I think it's just kind of spreading out some of those FanDuel center shares. Like the 36 is obviously big there. So 36, that's 52% of it already. 60, 68. It's about 70% across those five guys. And then you've got at least some of these shares of Bam, I would suspect, are going in there. But it's interesting that he came up a little lighter, even with that value score being where it is, even with the raw projection being where it is for under 10K. Kind of interesting. Again, would not be a mistake to take more Cat on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you don't have to worry about it. 9,400, he's rocketing into 54% of our top 150 lineups and looks like a dynamite option. Cam Whitmore we talked about already, but again, another guy just coming through as a very strong value square on DraftKings for 36. A lot less so on FanDuel where the price is higher and he doesn't have the MPE, but still 26% in our pocket. That's a pretty decent share of Cam Whitmore. He's played at a 0.99 on 24% usage FanDuel, 1.02 per minute on DraftKings. Very appealing option. Bam at 1.16 on both sites per minute. No Jimmy. Playing alongside Khalil Ware now. A couple of big men to throw at a pushover Chicago front court. I think that's fair to say. It's going to be ugly out there on the Chicago side among the bigs. Really like everything Miami in that one. Can't stress it enough. No, I've got Bam up above that 116 for today. I think I got him in the 1.2s. I give him the full 10th of a point. 1.26 per minute for Bam today. So absolutely love it. 35%. That's another one I wouldn't mind if we're a little bit higher. I think that enough of that game environment and just his opportunity specifically in that game environment. If you're at 40 plus and just with the field, I think that's okay. 7,900 is a good enough price for that power forward and center eligibility. 81, we're just getting them on FanDuel, so you don't really have to worry about the distribution, but it looks very, very good. Pirtle on the other side of Cat, I don't love. He's coming up a little bit, but below the field. He could conceivably score at will against Towns. It's not like Towns is a strong defender, but I would just so much rather invest in different ways than taking Pirtle shares here. He's fine, 1.17 per minute. I don't know. Is who he is looking kind of a spot for Pirtle. At 64 on DraftKings, it's a different conversation. That's a pretty cheap price. 1.14 per minute. That puts him in a 5.75 value score. He is basically the same. Pirtle, Ayton, and Khalil Ware, essentially the same as far as their prices, their positioning, their value scores, and their overall impact in distributions for the slate. So if you've been here before, or if you've been paying attention through the beginning of this show, you know that I'm about to tell you that there's plenty of flexibility between these three guys. And if you need salary, if you're at 65, you've built the lineup around DeAndre Ayton, and you find yourself at 65 and 300 short of being able to reach, I don't know, a LeBron share, let's say, or a Jason Tatum share. Just change the Ayton to Khalil Ware. If you find yourself with Ware in a lineup and you're leaving $400 on the table and you'd rather spend that money, not mandatory, but if, move on up to DeAndre Ayton, Jakob Poeltl. Those guys are interchangeable and everybody's coming up a little bit. We are below the field on all three. So the way I would probably do it is to juice one up above the field at the slight expense of the other two. You could argue about, actually, I don't know that it's an argument. The cheapest guy is technically at the lightest ownership. I think I would probably do that because Ware's also in the best game environment between those three guys. So if I'm doing that, that's probably the direction I head. Take a little bit lighter on both of Pirtle and Ayton, keep them a little bit further below the field, maybe 25% of Pirtle and 20% of Ayton, and drop those shares directly into $6,100 Ware. See what that's buying you at other positions for one, and then you're getting probably up to a plus position on Ware in the best spot out of the three. Not bad. That's a different story on FanDuel. 72 apiece for Pirtle and Ayton single center. 1,000 less for Kilo Ware. Makes it very obvious we want him 36% of the time, 5.73 value score, the best value score second best value score behind Precious among center eligible players on our power forward and center eligible players on the FanDuel slate. So looking like a tremendous piece over there. Josh Hart coming up more than I expected. 25% on both sites, 7,900 both forward spots on FanDuel, 7,700 both forward spots on DraftKings. Got him right on his 1.02 per minute production for the season. Just tremendous minutes, 38 minutes projected. That's dude averages 37.6. Played 40.1 in his last one. Hart is a player who needs those minutes to put up the big scores that he does, to reach the triple doubles that he does and everything. He gets through to those marks because of all the minutes that he plays. He's a very, very good NBA player. He's not a superstar, but he's very good at everything. But if he plays in an odd day on a back-to-back where he's banged up, and presumably they're going to handle their business again on a low-end Toronto team that's missing RJ Barrett, if he plays 32 or 34, just normal human minutes instead of 38 to 40, there's a big downturn in that Josh Hart share. So just be aware of that. There's another one that comes with a little bit of an asterisk, other than the fact that if Hart's alive, if his heart is beating, Heart, he's probably playing 38 minutes. Zaire, we talked about, looking rock solid across sites at his price. Tatum, nothing wrong with Tatum. 17% on FanDuel. If you can get more, take more. 9,800 on DraftKings, 25% if exposed in our top 150 level with the field. If you can get more, take more. Even though he's below value threshold on both sites, you're talking about one of 3 or 4 players with, around a 50-point projection, 65-point upside. Yeah, Cleveland's good defensively, but that is the highest total of the slate because Boston is great offensively. Cleveland is great offensively. So this is just a collision of 2 of the 5 best teams in the NBA right now, or 2 of the 7, however you want to define that. So everything Tatum looks good right now, and definitely think you could get away with having more than that. It's probably at the expense of like LeBron shares or Cat shares, but it's doable. Buzelis is coming up level with the field for the 4,000 on DraftKings. Power forward only over there. 5.67 value score. Looks totally playable. That's in a 26-minute projection, which is exactly what he played in their last game. He put up 16 FanDuel points in that one. For the season, he's played at 0.88, 0.87 across on DraftKings. Essentially average usage. As long as we're around 26 minutes, we have the opportunity to get there. I prefer the multi-position and not the price, but the multi-position on FanDuel makes him a lot more appealing. 5.64 value score over there also is putting him in 42% of lineups. At the 4,000 power forward only, I think it's the positioning probably that's having the biggest impact on him. Yeah, we just got a lot of guys that are going through where he's occupying power forward, probably getting him at forward or one of these guys. There's a lot of options going through the forward spot. I wouldn't mind having a little bit more, though. I think he's reasonable for value. The Jovic's, Jaime Jaquez's of the world, I consider essentially mix and match type guys. I've got it at 28 minutes for Jovic, 24 minutes for Jaquez, but those do bounce around a little bit. Both guys average close to 24. Nobody came up above the field, but we got double-digit shares of both of those guys as well as Jaylen Brown. Obviously, one of these things is not like the other two. %, of Jovic for 5,000 power forward and center on DraftKings. Price and position differences, I can see it, but I think we want to be below the field, and I think if you give it a haircut from there and take like 15%, 12% even, you're probably fine. But again, everything on the Miami side is goosed a little bit by virtue of facing Chicago, so everybody's going to look at worst pretty playable. Jaquez is the same thing, 8%, 10%, 5.08 value score, under the value threshold on FanDuel for the 46 I don't love, and all three of these guys are under the value threshold. Out of everybody in that group, obviously, if you can get there, you want Jaylen Brown, but that is an entirely different salary proposition. It's over the 5 mark, but sub 5.5 value on DraftKings, sub 5 on FanDuel. We're getting him 15% of the time there, 11% of the time on DraftKings. Should be a good option in the in the high end Boston Cleveland game, but give me Jason Tatum if I have to decide between the two. What I'm not seeing a ton of is where are the Cleveland bigs? Just pull that game up. Interesting. I really thought we were going to have more Kristaps Porzingis here. Porzingis is just really cheap on DraftKings. So when I was putting the projections together, that kind of stood out. I flagged that mentally as that'll probably pop when you look at the sim results later. I'm just checking his public ownership. That's aggressively light. Porzingis is in the ownership projections. He's the most highly owned Celtic. We're way lighter than the field there. I just love that $7,100 price. He's 82 on FanDuel. I get why we're not really getting there on FanDuel. Is it justification to give him a little bit more? .29. I can find some justification to give him another fantasy point, probably. It wouldn't make a gigantic difference. I think it's probably worth doing projections-wise. Just give him a little tiny bit of a nudge. Because while I'm fine being below the field on a 20-something owned Kristaps Porzingis against Cleveland's bigs, that price is just too appealing for a 1.29 per minute player. And 1.29, that's exactly where he was last year. FanDuel scale, but same deal. So I think we probably want to juice that a little bit and land like here-ish on Porzingis, where we're like a light yellow arrow, a little bit lighter than the field, but we're into at least the double digits. 12, 15% is probably more correct. Because he's probably going to go up as the afternoon rolls on DK. I think you want to be in the 12-15 range, or take a stronger position, take a stronger plus position. I don't love this big minus position on Porzingis on DraftKings. On FanDuel, again, I get it. He's 82 over there. We're really not getting much Mobley. 5-6% across sites below the field. Not getting much Allen. 2% on FanDuel, 1% on DraftKings. You can see I did give him that additional minute we talked about, but not really coming up all that much. All of the Niang, Struces, Horfords, Cornets, Hausers, Tysons of the world not coming up at all. So really, it's really right now looking like all things Celtics if you're going to this game, and then just scraps from the Cleveland side. Put everybody else back on the board. Karis LeVert, we didn't talk about among the guards. He's very cheap on DraftKings. He's a 5.5 plus value guy. We got him 8% of the time below the field. But that's a guy maybe to keep in mind where you could probably pretty easily rotate out of other similarly priced 3,800, 3,600, 4,000 type options that are projected for mid-20s minutes around, the value plays of the slate. You could move up on some shares of him. And the reason I think it's maybe interesting is because, we're below the field at 8%, but that means the field's ownership is 10, 12% there. So it's pretty easy to creep back up ahead of the field on a very cheap play with multi-position eligibility. It's a 0.96 per minute guy this year, 1.03 per minute last year. So you get a little bit better production than dipping into the well of 0.65, 0.70 types. So I don't mind a little bit more Levert there maybe. You can just put a little flag on that too. Another guy I want to look at after the show real quick. I might owe him a minor tickle as far as the rate goes. Half a point. It sounds meaningless, but it can matter. Not half a point per minute. Half a point like overall. You'd be stunned with how much a half a point can make a difference sometimes though. Garland, we got a little bit. Again, Mobley, we got a little bit. Mitchell, 7% FanDuel, 2% DraftKings. It's problematic on the Cleveland side of this one a little bit. Not surprised. I definitely think there's room to grab shares on both sides. If you get heavy on Tatum Brown shares, Porzingis shares, you can balance those with some guys from the other side and just shoot for the monster game that everybody's thinking this will be. Yeah, the Cleveland side's coming up a little bit lighter. Let's get everybody back here. Come on. 432. I know I said we'd be out by 4:30, but apparently I was lying. We're close, though. Only a few more guys to talk about. Precious. Whether he starts or not, honestly, I think bottom end, we're getting like 28 minutes, 29 minutes. And last night he played 34 and a half. Got him at 32 for today. He's 5,200 on FanDuel. That puts him in a 588 value score and one of the top exposed guys on the entire FanDuel slate at 79%. Power forward and center eligibility. Looks dynamite. 5,700 on DraftKings. We only got him 9% of the time and lighter than the field. I don't think that's a bad alternative as far as mix and matching some of these guys. But that price is a little bit higher than the FanDuel one, and it seems to be having an impact. It's got him below the value threshold. Not at a bad value mark, but below the threshold. So a rotational piece here and a stick of dynamite on the FanDuel slate. Norm Powell, mix and match on both sides, 75-69. The price is just up with his good production this year. No real desire to get there. Zubac, I could see a little bit more than this of Zubac. It's another spot where, yeah, we're under the field, but if the field's going to be 10, 12%, it's easy enough to claw your way back up above the field if you want to. Pretty solid minutes in the 32 to 34 range. He played 40 in their last game, put up a 41-1. Going against a Lakers team that is suddenly depleted in size. Could benefit Zubac here. I don't hate that option and grabbing a little bit more. I like that we're at least getting some. But if you wanted to just tell me that you were doubling this up, taking 15% of Zubac at 74 and shaving down your, well, not Bam necessarily. Let's say like you were doing it at util at the expense of a few of those Josh Hart shares. I don't think that's crazy. You getting a discount? I don't mind that. Bridges, mix and match quality at worst. Again, all the Knicks starters, just usual roles, going to look pretty good, except for OG, obviously, who's not playing. But we just plug the next guy up into that role, and the rotation doesn't get any deeper, really. It's just whatever 8, 9 guys Tibbs has at the front of the bench. Rui did not come up on FanDuel for 57 across both forward spots. 51 on DraftKings. We got him a little bit more, but lighter than the field, 6%. He's a 0.77 per minute guy, kind of a light usage guy, but presumably plenty of minutes and an uptick in opportunity for him. In their most recent game also, 32.6 and 38.4. That's not terrible from a $5,000 forward. I could see it on DK, but I wouldn't go chasing the field up the ladder. Same with basically all of these guys. These are your your big bag of mix and match pieces and parts, but nobody to really chase back to the field. Siakam's fine at 8,000. Evan Mobley's fine at 8,000 as well. 6,900 for Danny Avdia is a moving part in that late game with Portland and Indy, where we want to have some of those pieces and parts of for movement, especially if this guy ends up not playing again. I could see getting some Denny. He's 10% on FanDuel. Siakam 6%. Big outlier here in Amin Thompson, who we talked about already. But again, 26% on the FanDuel slate. A lot lighter on some of those guys. Him, Scotty Barnes that we talked about. Again, this one is KP. I definitely want more of that. DraftKings. I want more of that DraftKings Porzingis play. Kawhi is a mix and match option. Io. I could argue for a little bit more Io than this, I think. The value is not great at 56, but he's capable of breaking off a decent game. And again, with Levine clearing out there should be opportunities for a lot of these Chicago guys to take a little step forward. It's 0.85, 0.86 guy across sites. Just 15.8% usage is not ideal, though. 8% on FanDuel below the field, 2% on DraftKings below the field. LeBron, as mentioned, 28% FanDuel, looks great over there, 50-plus projection. That puts him at just a 4.86 against his 10-3, but at least he's got positional flex, power forward, and small forward eligibility. For 10-8 on DraftKings, we're way below the 5.5 that we're looking for value-wise. Power forward only, we got him 1.3% of the time. But all that said, it's LeBron without AD in a good enough matchup. So if you can take a few more shares of LeBron, if you got some open spots and some salary to spend, it's not a mistake to have more. It's just not going to math out as a good price fit against that 10-8. But if you're on your last spot with 10-8 to spend, he's a perfectly fine choice. Vooch is a big no thank you on both sites. 82 on DraftKings, 83 on FanDuel. I just don't see it. Again, Allen, you could take more. He's low owned. This is actually another interesting one. 64 on DraftKings. That is not a bad price to find Jared Allen. So our 1.3% there is technically below the field, but it's only technically below the field. If you had 3 more shares of Jared Allen, you'd be above the field. That's not a bad option to keep in mind as a good, completely unowned rotational piece for some of these other guys. I would put Jared Allen right into the mix with these 3 guys. I don't think that's crazy. I'm going to forget who the third one is. Damn it. Short-term memory did well on the first 3. I forget who the fourth guy in that mix was. Who was it? It was Pirtle, Allen. Somebody else tell me. Damn it. Here, wait. I think I can undo redo, right? Yeah, all right. Pirtle, Allen, and Ayton. This is our last tangent, then I'm going to wrap up the last couple points, and then I'm going to punch out because, again, got to get through that NHL slate and then be on top of all this stuff. But just looking at these 3 guys these 4 guys now, side by side, this was the group of guys that I highlighted earlier because of how much they were coming up. But tell me where the offset is. You're getting a little bit lower of a value score from Jared Allen, but not dramatically. Yeah, he's below the threshold while these guys are in the 5.7s. But I mean, in the raw point projection, we're not far off the mark. That's in a 32-minute game. If Allen gets 33, we're going to get more competitive. His per minute numbers are as good, if not better, than the immediate competes here. This is more of a DraftKings conversation, I think. because you got a lot less of everybody except for Khalil Ware, who is just the go-to out of this group at the offset price on FanDuel. So it's a different conversation across sites. But as I was highlighting, with the ability to drop down on two of these guys, push one up, or just move parts around, keep Jarrett Allen in mind in that conversation, because he's owned at like 1.5%, while all these guys are going to be owned in this kind of range, 25, 30%. That's not crazy to consider him right in line with that group of players. Honestly, that is like a potentially hidden gem that we uncovered in this in looking at this slate. That's really, really interesting how he fits in with these these three guys. Hopefully that has value for you guys when I dig into that. I think this is the most interesting thing we've uncovered on this entire show. If I was playing on DraftKings, I might really, if I was playing one lineup, not necessarily just because I would want to look at the, obviously the dynamics of the entire thing, but that would be a really interesting way to differentiate a lineup. Standout. Let's see what's going on in the chat last couple minutes here. Doug likes Jaden Hardy. Put everybody back on the board here. That's what I did with him. I only gave him 16. Didn't really get there. If you give him the 20, 22, it's going to just go up and up. And I might juggle these minutes a little bit as we go. This was projected, which is kind of like a nebulous kind of minutes in the middle. It was right when I was doing this game that Martin and Grimes trade came down. So I was just like, forget it. I think this is what it'll look like. We'll refine that as we get closer and we get through these next couple of updates. I don't know that he's going to look dynamite. He does have decent usage when he gets into action. He averages just under 16 minutes a night, 39 games this season. 4,000 is fine price-wise, but you can see where we're at now. If you juice that by, I'll do it on DK where everybody cares, at 3,800. 8 per minute, and we want to give him another. I'm going to call it 5. You know what? Let's just see what he looks like at 20. That's a lot closer to the mark. The actual projection bump would probably be more into like that territory, 4.87 value. If you can get him to 20 fantasy points, I think you're there for the play. You don't want to obviously artificially do it. It would be a minutes-based thing. Not the best rate guy, but not the worst also. 0.88 per minute this year on DraftKings. 0.83 on FanDuel, was a 0.88 per minute player on FanDuel last year. So a little bit of a downturn, but not completely terrible. I should have read more of Doug's comments. Doug went on to say, I think Artie's being overlooked. Or maybe not. Didn't realize Exum was back. So, yeah, Exum is in there. Power saying, I like Hardy. He'll back up Kyrie. Since then, we will move to the 2 with Grimes gone and Max Christie's available, so he'll back him up. Exum will back up Clay at the 3. I haven't thought nearly that hard about it, Power, but sounds good. I think that makes sense. Power's asking, do you think Ayton plays? He had 42 minutes last night. He has been playing a little bit more minutes-wise. He wasn't listed, right? Or do we have their injury report? 4:45. I'm at the back end of where I said I wanted to get off now. Only Matty Thybulle's listed on their injury report. I think you actually pointed that out in your question. If they're not, I think he plays, just based on the information we got right now. Would it be concerning if I had to guess without having gotten the injury report without him on it? I probably would have said at least a little skepticism. Definitely a fragile dude who doesn't typically play massive minutes, with a big uptick in minutes just last night on a back-to-back. I don't love it, but right now we got him in because they got him in. If things change with that one, fortunately, we know exactly where to go. Actually, something to mention with, whoops. So right now with Indy, if Turner doesn't go, which is the case that we had last night, we're going to have a value-based Thomas Bryant, who I just realized I'm looking at the other sheet when I pulled that up. I got him at 16 right now, and he is not coming up on either site. That's despite, even at 16 minutes, coming up with a 5.3 value score on DraftKings because he's only 3,200 over there. That could get awful interesting in a hurry if he sees more minutes. Put up 25-7 in 25-7, exactly a point per minute in last night's game. You will see him play basically exactly. That's where I would project him. I'd give him 26 minutes probably if we get the Turner out. And again, Turner's on the block. Wouldn't be crazy if he doesn't play this game. So that's one of the reasons to consider having some swappability in that late game. If you have Ayton and you get that news, you would then switch to Bryant at the center spot. So basically for every Ayton lineup, I would want to have at least one more piece in that lineup from those late games. Because if you're swapping Ayton out, taking the cheap Bryant shares, you're going to want to be able to spend that money on something. You're going to need to spend that money on something. So that was just one more thing that we had to throw in there at the end of the show. I think we've covered everybody. Jumping around a little bit here at the end. Let me just one last look at that forwards and centers list. I just want to make sure we didn't leave anybody on the table. And then, for real, going to punch out of here and get those NHL projections done. DraftKings, I know we talked through all of these guys. We just get into mixy-matchy territory around, yeah, we did this. Siakam, Mobley, et cetera, et cetera. So LeBron was a big outlier. Kamara, we talked about, was a pretty decent-sized outlier at 29% on FanDuel and 0.67% on DraftKings. And then down the board, we did get a little bit of Dorian Finney-Smith, who take him or leave him. Nick Claxton, take him or leave him. And again, might be out there in bubble wrap because they're trying to move him. Jeremy Grant, not really. Jackson Hayes, not really. Dylan Brooks, not really. I think somebody in chat mentioned Council, and I'm not seeing it. Yeah, Ricky did not come up today. I gave him 14 minutes, and at 48, he's not going to come up, and at 43, he's not going to come up. Not with the competitive values that are on the board right now. If we get him for more minutes than that, and that's going to depend entirely on Philly's injury report, then it would become a different situation. Right now for Philly, Andre Drummond, Joel Embiid, Eric Gordon, Caleb Martin, and KJ Martin are all questionable. And then we had Paul George, Jared McCain, both still out. So we'll need some news on that one. Keep an eye on him. At best, I think he would become like you can slot him into some lineups, functional, one of these kind of value guys. Nothing crazy. He would probably look like Connect. That's not a terrible comp. Connect is cheaper, so you'd probably get Connect more, but not dissimilar overall. Anyway, Nuke says, switched all my Tyler Smith to Precious. Yeah, those last night's slate was one of the messiest in recent memory with some of that. Between the trades, the injuries, the ins, the outs, team switching lineups at the last minute, it was not the most fun one in the world to just be sitting here projecting and doing and redoing. Anyway, 450. Let me punch out of here, gang. NHL projections are going to be done up on the site in the next half-ish hour. If you're looking for those, they'll be there. Updates for NBA throughout. Super Bowl projections going up tonight. I know I said it would be over the weekend. I decided to hold them in a little bit longer, so they'll be up on the site later tonight. Access to all three of those sports is under $1 a day on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly plan. Baseball's right around the corner. Going to have some season-long content going up. Going to be on top of daily. It's going to be a blast through the summer. Hang out with us. Everybody jump on. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Share it when you do. I love seeing those screenshots. We'll be back for more tomorrow. Probably an early one tomorrow again. I'm going to try and slide the show a little earlier into the afternoon and avoid those catastrophes at 4 and 4:30. We'll see how we do. See you tomorrow, gang. Later.